Okay, and welcome back to another RWR Book Club for Writers. This is a sessions that Christine set up. Christine's been a little bit out of it lately because she's just had a knee operation. So
Oh,
we're going to
fine.
see how much
That's
we
why
can
you're in
stuff
the
up her.
bedroom.
Yeah, let's see if we stuff up her pet project, or if we can pull it off this week. Now, we've got a very special book that we reviewed this week, and that is John Marsden's Everything I Know About Writing. It's a bit of an old guide on writing, but it still stands up pretty well. And we're going to go through the bits that we think still work, the bits maybe we don't agree with. And it's special for us because John Marsden was a presenter at the Rainforest Writing Retreat, a very popular one. Everybody still remembers him telling us about the potatoes and how no two potatoes are alike. So that should be like your characters. So we're really looking forward. John Marsden has recently passed away. And while we're extremely sad and obviously very sad for his family as well, we wanted to celebrate something that he created. So we wanted to do it justice and have a look at it tonight. So this is the book in case you haven't seen it. It is available in paperback and it's available on Kindle. There's no audio recording that I could find. However, if you have a Kindle, it will read to you in the little monotone voice, which would still do a better job than my Ocker Aussie voice. So maybe take that one. But let's just dive right in. Did anyone get to have a gander at this book or have any comments about it before we start? All
It's
right,
something I read a long time ago, and it
yeah,
was great to review it again.
yeah. This feels like high school all over when we're on the day. Did anyone read the book that we're doing the test on today? Um, but look, we can flick through some random pages. I also read this a long, long time ago, and I was also very lucky when John was at our retreat that he signed it for me too, which is really nice. So it's kind of special to me. But I did have a go at some of the parts of it this time so that I could refresh myself. I just didn't get to do all of it, but that's good. We've got to save some things for next time. And I thought having a look right from the start, so I made some notes to be professional. See, Chris, I can do this. Um, right from the start, but please come back. Um, I liked how he talked about in the opening, he talks a lot about playing with language, about just loving words and wanting to listen to their sounds and play with different sounds and make different sounds. And I thought we might kick that off as a starting point because I think most writers, either we were childhood readers or even if we weren't, we just loved the sounds of things. So you might not have been much of a reader, but maybe you loved songs or something like that, and you just loved the way words sound. Has anyone got anything that they remember about sounds of words that they really, really like? Like I love words like chihuahua. I just think that's a great word. Has anyone got any like favorite words that they just love the sound of or
Mm,
that they tend to use a lot
I,
other than but
I
and
like
and?
serendipity.
Yeah, that's a great word. Yeah, that's a really good word too. Yeah, and like
stupendous.
yeah, stupendous is a good one too because it has kind of when you first start hearing the way it's said, you think it's going to be a negative thing and then it becomes a positive thing. And it's interesting how some of those words change meaning as well. Like awesome. Awesome is a word that originally meant to instill fear in something. Like it was, if it was awesome, it was terrifying, but awesome just means really good now. So
Mm.
it's interesting how words change over time as well. And if you like poetry, you love the sound of words. You're very more aware of how words can have a rhythm.
Mm.
And when you put them together, when you do things like alliteration, where you have a lot of words starting with the same consonant. So you might have, I'm really for it, thinking on things on the spot. So it's like Billy bounced the ball. But when you get really good examples of that, and often you get it in advertising,
Mm.
then it's really catchy and it sticks with you.
Mm.
Yeah. He told a joke in here, and I reread this so many times, this joke, because I don't get it. So I'm going to see if anyone can explain this joke, because this is hurting me. He said,
what page was it?
now I'm flicking through. I don't write down page numbers. I don't do the homework. But I'm flicking through to see, because it's pretty early on, and it's a joke about a duck. And
yeah, I know the one you're talking about. It has one problem, which is it has a foot that's exactly the same.
Yes, I found it, by the way. It's on page 4, which will show you how far I got. No, I went much further than page 4. It says, what's the difference between a duck? One of its feet is both the same. This has kept me up at night. So I was like, what? And this is apparently a joke his dad liked to tell him. And I'm just like, oh, are you remembering it right? Like, so if anyone can decipher this joke, because I have even Googled it and I cannot find this joke. So
I think it's just a play on words.
Yeah.
See, one of its feet, that's 2.
Yep.
Is both
the same.
So
okay.
I think it's just a play on words.
It's just silly words.
Yeah.
Maybe, yeah.
Could it mean that ducks look the same?
Maybe it's got 2 left feet.
Maybe.
They've got 2 feet that are identical.
Yeah.
You couldn't tell. You couldn't tell which is left or which is right if you lifted them off the duck.
And that's going to be the focus of tonight's episode. We're deciphering the joke. What's the difference between a duck? One of its feet is both the same. Yeah. Well, it makes people laugh, so I guess it's a joke. Yeah, so that did hurt me a little bit. The others were all sort of like corny dad jokes, which I love. And especially he's talking about his dad, so that's really sweet that he remembers that. Yes. And then he goes on to talk about, so the first part of this book I found is a lot of things of him giving you lots of examples. And he goes on to talk about what is good writing, like good English, what is a good use of words. And some of the points he made were that you need to listen. You need to go out and listen to the way people actually speak. And I think that's so important, especially if you're writing about young adults, because I can guarantee if you listen to them speak this year, in 3 years, totally completely different language. Yep. There's lots of words coming up now where I'm like, I have no idea what you're saying to me, kid. Like, you just slow down and can you mime it out or something? There's a communication issue happening here. And I think it's really interesting. Like, I remember words when I was at school, like rad. Things were really rad, but no kid would know what that means now. Yeah. And even common language. We had a spelling test where we were using words that had the sound. So one of the words I put in there was hurl. And none of my 12 and 13-year-old children in my class knew what that word meant. They'd never heard the word hurl. And I'm like, it's good. You can hurl something. You can hurl something. And because they were saying yeet at the time. And I don't know if yeet's still around. But these words change so often that listening to the way people actually say it, instead of what we tend to do, well, maybe what I tend to do wrong, is you try and construct a conversation to have the purpose you want it to have. But really, then it loses its flavor. And you have to cut out the boring bits, but you want to grasp the way people actually speak. What are their colloquialisms? Has anyone got a favorite thing about spying on people to hear what they say? Or has anyone heard something really good?
Mine now.
Depends.
I remember,
specific scene, I'll put myself in that area. So if I'm writing a coffee shop scene, I'll go and get into a coffee shop and listen to that. Or if it's a graveyard scene, I'll sneak up beside somebody who's there talking about loved ones or
Love sneaking up on people in a graveyard. That's a bit of fun. That could become a new pastime.
Yeah.
Sneaking up on people in graveyards. Love that idea.
done it before. But I actually take myself so I then can put myself in people's shoes that are actually in that position. So
Yeah.
like if you're going to do a fishing story, go and stand next to the fishermen down on the wharves and things like that.
Yeah.
Get the way that they speak.
Yeah. And sometimes it's a happy accident. Sometimes you go somewhere and then a story sparks because of the environment you're in. I did that when I was writing my kids' mystery novel set in the dog showing world, because me and the kids went to some dog shows because we love animals and it was fun. But it's a bizarre world. Like most people, almost everyone there is so lovely and they all want to help each other, but you get a weird one every now and then. And people who yell out and heckle from the audience when the dogs are going around and, saying, oh, I've got a better dog at home. I'm like, well, dude, you don't have your dog here. Just let them have their day. Like, what's your problem? Yeah, so it's a straight. And so in my mind, while I was sitting there and I was literally listening to this man yelling out and heckling people, showing their dogs, I thought this would be a brilliant place for a murder. This is if someone killed that guy, like how many suspects would there be right now? It's rubbed a lot of people the wrong way. Yeah. So so sometimes it's it's just a happy accident. I will mention one that I remember somebody telling me, and that is Kaz Delaney, another presenter of ours who very sadly, we're all very crushed by it, passed away recently. And she was saying in her presentation that she was riding on a bus and she heard a young man. She does a lot of romance writing, so she listens to like lovers having their conversations. She heard a young man call his girlfriend and he's on the phone. He said to her, oh, yeah, I'm on my way. I'm on the bus and I've got a mango. And it was like the first mangoes for the season. He was so excited. And that just stuck with her, his excitement of going to see his girlfriend and bringing a mango. And I just thought that's so beautiful. Because it's the little things, it doesn't have to be the grand things. He then goes on. So listening to people speak is something you should go out and do. He then goes on to say also in good English that you have to have no clutter. So you get rid of all the bits that don't matter in the writing.
Repeat themselves and stuff.
Yeah. We're still going to write them in our first draft. And then Charmaine's going to get them and then she's going to cut them all out. And then people are going to say, can I not put it back a little bit? Or maybe one bit. But we need to get rid of all that jargon. And so when we're using technical words, make sure, or words that only mean things to us, make sure that we either explain what it is, put it in the context where it makes sense, or get rid of it because it serves no purpose if you use a word nobody understands. When I first started writing, I was like, everyone's talking about these WIPs. Do I need a WIP? Where do I get a WIP from? I had no idea at the time that it was a work in progress. So until somebody explains it to you, you don't know. So if you're going to use terms like that, make sure, or initialisms, I have a pet hate of initialisms, a fear maybe, put it in context so that even if they don't know what it stands for, the way you've used it, it's quite clear what it's referring to. So make sure you do that or get rid of it, declutter, get rid of all those extra words. He says that's to avoid confusion too. Yeah, because readers are not enjoying themselves if they're just confused about what's going on. They don't want a bit of...
How he talks about, what you're talking about, the tautologies, is that it?
Yes, that's a good word, isn't it?
Yeah, and because a lot of people do this, and I see it in my own writing, is you write things twice, like what he says here. The fourth biggest brewer in the world, and there's only 3 brewers behind it, which means they're saying the same thing twice in the one sentence. After that sentence, I'm in short story writing, which we do a lot of. I find that that's something that you really got to nail, and that's really good advice, and it's a good way of actually bringing that up because it's a thing.
Yes. I love that word now. Now that I didn't remember reading that word before. And when I came across it this time, I was like, oh, what a great word. And something that I also do in my first drafts, where you overstate things again and again. Like, the reader's not an idiot. They'll work it out the first time. You don't have to say it 3 times. But we do it the first time we write, because we're trying to make everything quite clear. And then in your edits, you can go through and say, no, I've already said that. I can get rid of it. But yeah, great word.
I love it.
Yeah. And he says to avoid ambiguity as well, but obviously sometimes, so in a murder mystery, you want a little bit of that because you don't want to be too clear about things, but not in the way that readers are just not sure what you're referring to. Like, yeah, if you're just saying she walked her pet every day and this pet was really important to her, and we're all trying to picture it, but it could be an octopus. I don't know. You just be a little bit clearer, unless it's important that you're hiding that information.
That would be weird, a land octopus.
Look, if my family ends up with a pet octopus, no one would be surprised. We just, the pets we get, it'd be like, sure, why not? And we would probably end up with one because it would follow us home or something like that. And then we've now got an octopus as well.
I'm a bit worried about where you live if you've got octopus following you.
Especially, well, I'm in Ipswich, so we are nowhere near the ocean. But you never know. If it's going to try that hard, then it's welcome in the Clancy house. So yep, that's fine. He moves on to mixed metaphors, and this is one that is a pet love of mine. Is when somebody does a metaphor really well, I could reread those pages over and over. So an example for that is if you're likening your relationship that's just starting to grow with a road trip, and you're talking about the curves of the road, and you're talking about potholes in the road that are a bit bumpy, and you're talking about the views as you drive and how everything seems lovely, and then maybe everything goes wrong, the car breaks down, and you're using that as a metaphor for what your relationship's like, and it continues. It's a beautiful thing, more beautiful than the one I just gave, but it works really well. But sometimes people try to be really clever with their metaphors, and they'll start talking about the relationship, and they'll say how it's like a journey down the road, and the speeding thrill of the roller coaster, and that apple that's gone rotten in your bag, and your head gets a little bit chaotic in your head because you're trying to imagine the marrying of these images, and the person's giving you too many different ones. So if you can get a metaphor, you can use a metaphor once, or you can keep using it in different ways, but on the same topic. One that I thought, my daughter wrote a story, I thought she did a great job, Matilda, and it was about an insurance salesman, but he sells, it's a futuristic sci-fi one. He sells insurance where you are willingly signing away to be terminated, but you'll get a big payout. So your family will get, because there's a lot of poverty in that. So it's sort of almost a reverse life insurance where you get the money up front, but then you have to die. And in it, she had this metaphor of birds right through it. So the young woman he's going to talk to is sparrow-like, and he was like a vulture. And she just mentioned things all the way through that related to birds. And I felt that was a lovely continuation. So she didn't switch halfway and liken him to a robot or something else that's not related. She just kept it, and pecking at somebody and all those sorts of things. And I thought that worked really well. So if you can get a metaphor and just continue it through, and this is another thing I think we do in edits, not in our first draft, but then you can weave it through. Oh, people love it. I love it. Has anyone got favourite metaphors that they like?
I had one of my stories that every time she didn't want to listen to what was happening, she put up the shutters.
Ah, yes, yep.
So and I had the hero already picking it and would say, hello, her shutters have gone up again.
Oh, okay, yep.
So
very good, yes. So that closed off. Yeah.
And
Yep,
that
slamming shut.
even though she said, I'm going to put my shutters up, other people were noticing that she was shutting out.
Yeah.
And picking up on the metaphor.
Yeah. And hopefully eventually finding a way to creep that light in by
the shutters
beautiful.
stop closing.
Yeah, nice. Very nice. Anyone else got a favourite metaphor?
I've done some bad ones, like using, rose petals as a metaphor for blood. Those
yes.
really gross things.
Because you paused and I thought, oh, this is getting saucy, but yes, blood, different sauce. Yeah. Oh, look, if you want to feel good about your metaphors, you just come to my Year 8 English class sometimes and we do metaphors and you get like, oh, she was as angry as Uncle Gary. Like, no one knows your Uncle Gary. Like, can you just give us something we know? She was as fast as something that went really fast. It's like that. Yeah. It's like, great. Yeah, you nailed that
feel
one.
better, Charmaine.
Yeah. So I have seen some great ones online too that people sort of intentionally mess up, which is always a lot of fun too. He also says that you want to avoid stating the obvious. Now, this might seem to clash with making sure things are clear, but you want your reader to work for some things. You don't want to state things that the reader's like, well, duh. Like if you have your character run out in the rain, don't then say, oh, she got wet. We're like, well, yeah, well, we know how that works. So don't state the obvious. And this is something I'm teaching my kids too, is that if you're a reader and you are reading a book for enjoyment, not because you're in Year 8 and you're forced to, but you actually wanted to read a book, then you probably enjoy the process of working things out. So if somebody's got a certain mood or something happening, you want to be like, oh, I think they're angry. You don't want to be told they stomped their feet, they slammed their hand on the desk, they were angry. You don't need to add that. It's obvious. If you want to tell someone that this story's happening somewhere in the future, you could open with, the smog in the air, the hoverboards flying past, the robots going around and collecting things. And people are going to go, oh, this is sometime in the future, rather than the year is 2045. Yeah, it's just, it makes it, we like to work for it a little bit. Not too unclear where we can't get it, but we like to work for it a little bit. And that puts a bit of enjoyment into the reading. So don't state the obvious. Let people work some things out. And if you've already given us the detail and the description, don't then tell us what it means. We can work out what it means. Has anyone read anything that has been like that and they've just gone, oh, this is really getting boring because they're just telling me everything? Not lately. Maybe the editors
just my own
better.
work. Just my own work.
That's always celebrated in first drafts. Celebrate the garbage because then we can sift through it. That's what we want. We need you to blurt all those ideas down and then go, right, let's make sense of this. And in the 7th or 8th edit, we start to see a little bit of a shape there. He went on different ways to end a story, which I thought was interesting. He talked about sometimes at the end, characters will reflect on the journey they've just had and they'll have a think about what has happened. Some stories like to end with the main character dying. Sometimes you just see the consequences of the wrongdoing someone's done. So they might show a character going off to prison or, sitting in their cell. He said his favorite was when you see that life continues. So this big thing has happened and then you see people getting on with their life afterwards. So you know that everything hasn't stopped. Life will go on. Life has continued. You want to make sure your ending satisfies the reader but leaves them wanting more. You want the reader to leave your story going, oh, I just want to go back in. I want to still be there. I don't want to let this go yet. And that's you've got a good ending when people want more. I will sometimes talk to my kids about what's the most important thing in a story. And we go through every story has to have 3 things. I've never come across a story that doesn't have these 3 things. There has to be a character, because otherwise you're just describing scenery. So there has to be someone in the story. There has to be a setting, because otherwise this character is just talking and not actually in anything. And there needs to be conflict, because otherwise we're just hearing about this really great day or this really nice or this really ordinary time this person had. And it's not a story, it's like a recount then. So you need those 3 things. And sometimes people say to me, oh, you also need a resolution. Most stories will have a resolution, but you don't always need a resolution. Some stories actually work really well without a resolution. And I'm thinking in particular like those goosebump horror stories where you have all the drama building up and the rumors, and at the end, you might see the werewolf leap out at them, but we don't find out what happened, because the horror story just wants to leave us on a jump scare. So you don't have to resolve it all. So sometimes you don't need a resolution, but you do need a character setting and problem. So in your endings, you don't have to always resolve it. Some genres really need a resolution. And I won't say always, because I think someone will then surprise me and do it in a way that I'm happy. I can't imagine a romance story not having some sort of resolution. It just leaves it up in the air, unless it's a series, because I think people would be upset with it. But then again, someone's going to write that and they're going to surprise me, and they will be right and I will be wrong, because it happens a lot. The only one he said to avoid is the dream endings. For anyone who's old enough to remember Who Shot JR, that was a TV series, what's it called? Falcon's Crest or something? Dallas, that's it.
Yeah.
Yes, Dallas. One of the big bad guys in the series got shot at the beginning of the season. He was dead. They were all trying to solve who shot him. And right at the end of the season, there were too many complaints that he was leaving. So he woke up, and it was all a dream the whole season. So people watched for a year just to find out it was a dream. So don't do that to your readers. They will not.
They won't be happy.
Yeah, they won't be happy. I did enjoy seeing him say that humor is a really important essence in almost all stories. You can use humor in lots of ways. So if you have a very serious story that's got a lot of depth to it, every now and then putting some humor in there just gives the reader a little breather, gives them some relief from all the darkness and depth that's going on. If you drag on that darkness for too long, it runs the risk of being sad, but also getting boring, because we don't pick up books just to feel depressed for like 3 hours. We want to just have little moments of relief where we can have a breather and then get back into the emotion of sadness. It also, you can use humor to make certain characters likable. If you have a character who's funny, people will like that character. You can flip that. And if you have a character that has no sense of humor, you can use that as a way of alienating them from the reader. So we can see that think of Wizard of Oz, the lady that was complaining about Toto and wanted to have him put down, had no sense of humor. So we all know that she must be a bad person because she can't laugh. Whereas the uncle and the aunt were having a few little jokes at her expense. So we know that they're good people. So humor can be used that way. And it's something that I think I always try to use in my stories, because I can't stay serious too long, so I need to have some relief. I'm not sure how everyone else feels about humor here. Do you think there's some genres that it doesn't work in, or? We're all okay with the humor?
Well, the story I'm working on at the moment, I'm retelling. I've used a little bit of humor,
Yeah.
I think. I'm retelling somebody's love story, but it doesn't have a happy ending because it's a Second World War II.
Yeah.
But certainly it started with humor, but it gets more and more serious because of what is happening to them. So
yeah, and you might just want to, when you're rereading this, you might want to go through and see where you feel if you feel like it's gone too long without just a little relief or
Bit of
something.
humour.
And
Yeah,
it can be a
that's
tiny
good
thing.
point. I hadn't even
Yeah.
considered that. I know
It
I've
doesn't
got
have to be a
humour at the
huge
beginning.
joke or anything. Yeah, it
Yeah.
just
Just
where
to,
they get to smile for a moment.
yeah,
Yeah.
a memory or something like that comes back to it.
Yeah, that would work. Definitely. I know humor is really important in horror because the 90s horror movies, and I think we've all heard the rumors about Linda Blair's one, The Exorcist, that they snuck in scenes in the film that you couldn't see because it's one shot, but it'd really traumatize you. But what they did do in the 90s, I don't know if that's a true thing, to be honest. I think that might be a myth. But what they did do is they analyzed a lot of the way people felt during the movie so that they could see what works. And they found that the use of humor works really well because you don't want to scare someone and scare them and scare them and scare them and scare them because it wears off. You heighten that emotion and eventually that adrenaline has to burn out. So you want to get them in that high adrenaline and then give them a rest and then get them up again, and that'll get their heart rate going even more. So they would do the thing like the cat scares. So where you know there's a serial killer, the audience knows, the character knows, all the lights go out in their apartment, there's a noise coming upstairs in their bedroom. They don't leave, they don't walk out the front door, they don't call the police, they go up the stairs to the bedroom, they hear a noise in the closet, they know there's a serial killer about, they know they're a potential victim, but they walk slowly, ever so slowly, to the closet and carefully, because that'll make a difference, open the doors of the closet and a cat jumps out. So we're all ratcheting up that stress and anxiety. And when the cat jumps out, we're like, oh, that's so funny. It's just a cat. And that's when they have the attack happen from behind, because then we're like, and you're getting the audience's emotions going like that, because watching horror films or reading horror, people do it just the same way they go on scary rides. They want to get a fright. So you want to get their emotions like that. And it's quite funny to see just how many horror movies have cats in them. Even Alien, which is out on a spaceship, the cat jumps out. Yes. And Blake Snyder's book on writing was called Save the Cat. And I misunderstood that. I always thought the term meant your hero has to save something. They have, even if they can't save themselves, they can't save another person, at least save the cat. And I thought it meant that because of Alien. But apparently it just means in your opening scenes, you should have your hero do something nice. And that way we know they're the good guy. For example, they could be coming across as terrible. Maybe they just robbed a bank, but they stop and help a cat out of a tree, and then we know they're okay. So that's something you use there. But yeah, if you can find a way to weave the humor in, again, it's not always easy to think, well, what's something funny that could happen here while you're writing your first draft. Sometimes you have to think about it and go back in your edits and put it in.
Unless, of course, you're Terry Pratchett.
Oh, yeah, well, then it's like funny. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Yes, Terry Pratchett. I love Terry Pratchett. His stuff is amazing. And I think that I love it so much because the humor kind of masks the seriousness of his work, which is criticizing the way our governments are run, the way our police departments are run, and criticizing humanity, but using humor so that we enjoy it. So it's like comedians can get away with. Somebody can tell you that you're all a bunch of racist people, and we'll laugh because it's funny and we don't take offense because it's meant as a joke, but it's also meant seriously. So it's really fun. Like, it's really something that connects us. It goes back to the early jesters in medieval times, where if you were to insult a king or a queen, you would be executed. The only person who was allowed to do that was the court jester. So they had a really important role. It wasn't just to entertain, but they had to bring to light things that the king was maybe doing wrong.
They were his conscience.
They were allowed to point it out. Yeah. Yeah. So they had a really important role with their humor. Yeah, so I feel like we're covering quite a lot of John Marsden's books so far. Really, that's all so far just in the beginning as well.
Yeah.
I might flip forward a bit now to look at where he said, so there's, using good English, using bad English, and then he talks about when you're looking at using language and cutting some of the clutter, one way to do that is to think about the extremes of what you're trying to say. So instead of saying something was, this is a very bad person, if you do a little scale, and I did a little diagram here that I was doing from his book, and at one end you put good, what would go at the other end? And it'd probably be evil. So maybe the word would be evil that you want to use instead of very bad. And so it's cutting the words and it's giving you the stronger word. So whatever you are trying to portray, try doing a little scale and putting things at the opposite ends. And that way you'll come up with the stronger verb that way because you'll know what the extreme is. So that's one way of doing that. And that cuts words, which he's that's something I agree with him. Always cut as many words as you can. Yeah. And then I think one of the last bits I was looking at, there's so much more here. And by this stage, we're getting to the part where he starts giving you some exercises to do. But
we like a good exercise.
We do like a good exercise, yes. And he tells us that you can look at the way you structure your story. That was something he talked about in that we tend to look at rising to the conflict. But he said some stories will have multiple conflicts. You might start with a conflict and then have a conflict. And you can't just have the tension going. Same as what we just said about needing some humor or something. You can't have, even in an action story, he said you can't have the tension going continuously the whole story. You need to, if you have a big conflict at the beginning, and I think a lot of those Mel Gibson movies where he was a cop started with somebody dying right at the beginning, and then you have the redemption arc, but then you have to drop down a bit and have the investigations and that, and then a big conflict towards the end as well to marry it up. Or you can have the ordinary world and it goes up to a big conflict. Or you can have another common story plot is you start in ordinary world, you go up to your first conflict and you think that's bad, but then things get worse and you get another conflict. And then you try and deal with that. So it drops down a bit, but then you get your final conflict, the big boss battle. And in between those, you have little dips in your story, in your mood, so that you're not hitting people with action, action, action. They need a rest. So I thought that was a good point to not get stuck when you're stuck telling your story and you're wondering why it's not working. Maybe the structure you're using is not the best one for your story. Maybe your story is more like the action thriller where we have a conflict at the beginning and a conflict at the end. Some of the exercises he has at the back of his book, he's put in lists of ideas that you could use. 600 writing topics.
Yeah.
So you'll never be short of some. And you can just go through and pick those at random. Here, let's pick one just to get an idea. He says to write about your favorite smells. That's one. There you go. Well, here's one you might like, Christine.
With our writing group.
Yeah. Oh, there's some really good ones.
Discuss the effect of fear in your life.
Yeah.
That could open a big can of worms.
Yeah, couldn't it become therapy?
Yeah.
Yeah.
How do you feel when you're underwater?
Yeah.
Because
Panicky because I can't swim.
some people hate water. And I specifically thought of when I reread this Outlander, where she talks about the guy who kidnaps the daughter, Brianna.
Yeah.
And he has a fear for drowning. And what do they do when they sentence him after he's captured?
They drown him.
They put him on a thing and they're going to drown him.
Yeah.
And I think, what? Wow. And then, as it turns out, she shoots him in the head so he doesn't drown.
That's a friend.
But can you imagine what the fear would be like in a person building that up? And he comes up with some fantastic little ones.
Yeah.
And, that is so good.
When we do character creations in my writing classes with the kids, I tell them we're not going to worry about what color their hair, what color their eyes. We don't care. We want to know what's one thing they lost in the past that they regret. And the kids will write something down. And then we go on to the important one. What's one thing they still have left that they could not bear to lose? And they'll come up with something. It can be a person, a thing, an animal, anything. They'll write it down. And then I'll let them know, guess what we're going to take off them. So they know that in the story, you got to find out what's your character's biggest fear of losing, and you take that away from them. Maybe not permanently, but at least so they think that they've lost it permanently. And yes, we've got to be mean to our characters. But yeah, fear is a really good one. I like one he says in here. This is tip number 180, if you're looking. February 30, right about February 30. I thought that's clever. Strange sort of world where we have February 30. So yeah, there's a lot of ideas in there for you to write about too. He goes over some other little tips in there as well. And look, this book covers everything. Some of it, I'll be honest, some of it is very basic stuff that most people, if you've been to any workshops and you've been writing for a little while, you've probably covered before. But some of it is his own take, and he gives some really good examples. And I've never come across that duck joke before, so the book was worth it, even if it was just for that.
It's very much like him, though, isn't it? This book sounds exactly like he talks.
Yes,
it does. Yes,
it does.
Yeah,
I really
definitely does.
Through, and I love all the, like you were just saying, the tips or topics for short stories and things like that.
Yeah,
they're amazing, because I have not come across that before in another book.
Yeah, it's a great idea.
Yeah, I love it. Just go, open the book up. Oh yes, let's have a look at what world record would you most like to break and why. Things like that, stuff that you don't think of. And he's written them all down, which is something that I think a lot of writers say they're going to do, but don't. And he's done the book and allowed us to sort of delve into his mind, I think.
Yeah. I think we did a fun one that I picked up from somewhere in our Facebook group for our writers club. I don't know if you remember a little while ago where we told everyone we wanted 50 ways that you could murder somebody with a doorknob. Yeah.
That was good.
Yeah, and we got some really good ones come in for that. That was great. Yeah, so you force yourself to think outside the box. All in all, I would say this one is a really good guide for writers, especially if you are coming at it new and you're at that stage where maybe you know a little bit about writing, but you're thinking, oh, I'm a bit lost with this. I've got some ideas. I've started writing. I don't know what to do next. This is a really good one to have. And my recommendation would be not to try and read it all at once, but to just read a bit, inspire yourself, go away, write, maybe read another guide, come back, read another section, so that you're actually taking those things in.
And it's great to reread, even if you have got the knowledge of a lot of this.
Yeah.
It's just great because, oh yeah, he's right, and stuff you think, oh, I forgot about that.
You're right.
It's really good in that regard.
You're right.
He deals with the senses and not just feelings, but the senses and stuff like that, which sometimes we forget all about.
Yeah.
And I think
he does it in a good way. Yep.
Some things that you question yourself about, am I doing the right thing? This book actually answers those questions, you know, and I really think it's a good book worth keeping on your shelf.
Yep.
I really do.
Me too. This one I've had for a very long time. I think I got this book back when it was published, and I just checked when that was, and that was 1993. Not that the cover dates it at all with our floppy disk there.
That thing.
It's a
And
floppy disk.
he never changed that, which I really think is with the reprints and stuff.
Yep.
He's
I
never
think that's
changed
great.
That's it too.
Look, about 4 years ago, because this is Ipswich, I went to a little post office newsagent to pick up a parcel, and on the shelf I saw this stack of floppy disks for sale. And I was just like, wow.
Wow.
Somebody must still have the computer.
Yep. And I remember when we went from the big floppy disk to these. So these are not called floppy disks, are they? They're hard disks or something.
Discs, that's right.
The floppy disks were the big ones. Yeah, I
They're
remember using
floppy.
those. Yeah, they're floppy. These ones weren't floppy. So I've used the wrong terminology because words change over time. But yep, check him out. He's very young and handsome man on the back there. Yeah. And yes, recommend. You can still get this book. It is available on Amazon. It hasn't been reprinted for a while, so sometimes you might even have to look for a second-hand one.
This is a second-hand because mine's still packed.
Oh, okay.
I haven't found it yet.
Yep, but you found one, so they're still around. And if
I
not,
got it
they
on
do
Amazon
have it
to reread.
Yeah, they do have it on Kindle, so you can always get a Kindle version. And I actually got that as well.
I'll pass this on to somebody else.
Yeah. And your new writing group, I assume you've got one already?
No, not yet.
Not yet? You will.
There's a couple of things going on in the neighbourhood, so
all right. We'll maybe save that chat for when we're not recording then. If we're gonna we
better stop.
What's the new term they tell me? The kids tell me, Miss, spill the tea. So we're going to spill the tea. We might do that off camera. All right. Well, any last comments, Christine?
Yeah, I wonder if we can also use this book for NaNoWriMo for ideas for writing in November when we're all together. And everybody does it all across the world.
Yes.
Something with the ideas in there. You know how we usually do that 5-minute write before we start writing? I wonder
for those of you who don't know, we, Chris and I, run a pretty big writers retreat every year called Rainforest Writing Retreat. And during NaNoWriMo, we do some Zooms. Last year, we started off well, and then my house got hit by a storm, and so I couldn't make a few of them. It kind of fizzled, but we'll be back at it. We'll be definitely, that's okay. Stuff happens. We'll be back at it next NaNoWriMo. And we do the exercises like Christine said, and I think you're right. I think this would be a great little resource to use during that, or if other people are doing their own little NaNoWriMo groups, then maybe they'd like to do that. A
little practice writing sessions.
We should do it all year.
Good idea. We should do one a week. How many others?
We should do more, Christine. We should do more.
Why not? Oh dear.
What have you been doing the last few weeks? Just lazing around, doing nothing.
Lazing around, getting my knee ripped out.
Yep. That's right. So we do have, guys, if you are interested and you haven't heard of us before, the Rainforest Writing Retreat. We do have a retreat this year, and I don't know the dates, but it's the last weekend of June. The website is rainforestwritingretreat.com. You can check it out. And this year's theme is the soul of writing. So we're looking at all the basics of creating, writing, editing, marketing, publishing, all of those things, just without any specific genre this year. We're just looking at all of those things. We've got a lot of big changes coming up for the retreat. Christine and I are going to back off a little bit and focus on the anthologies and the online services that we provide. And the Queensland Writers Centre has very generously offered to take over the running of the retreat side. This year, we're still doing it. What that might mean for those of you who come every year or have come many times, it might change a bit, because I have no ideas that they should run everything exactly the way we do. They will have their own flavour. So this might be the last year that you can get to go to a genuine Chris and Charmaine retreat, if that's appealing. Or you might want to wait till next year. But Queensland Writers Centre have been just a great help for us in helping us, because otherwise it just couldn't continue, because it's grown so fast, and that's brilliant, but to the point where it's just too big for us now. So we thought we'll get some roles, and we'll just focus on those and let somebody else do that too, so that we can also
the date,
remember what our families are like. Yeah.
The date's 27th to the 29th of June 2025.
Yep, that's what I said. 27th to 29th of June this year. So if you can come along and join us, we'd love to have you. There's still places available. Accommodation is getting tricky now. So if you are thinking of coming and staying at the retreat, you might have to check out what's left at Cedar Creek Lodges at Mount Tambourine, or check surrounding B&Bs or the Bearded Dragon Hotel nearby. There's some other places you can stay to, but they are getting snapped up pretty quickly. We still have seats available in the retreat, but the accommodation is going pretty quickly. So don't be slow about that. All right. Thanks, guys. We will wind it up for tonight. Our guests can hang around and chat if you like, but I'll just wind up the recording now. John Marsden's Everything I Know About Writing. Thanks for joining us. If you've got some thoughts on it, or if you've read this and you want to add something, feel free to add it in the comments, because we'll go through and have a look at those. Thanks, guys. Bye for now.
Thank you.